Thank you for joining us for tonight's International Dermatology Education Foundation Educational Series webinar. We're having some technical issues, and if you cannot see me, that would be why, but we're still excited to bring you this program this evening. Tonight's title of our program is Get to Know UCB, the Underdog that's taking over Immuno Dermatology. As our moderator, we have Dr. Leon Kircik, who is president of the International Dermatology Education Foundation. He is a clinical professor of dermatology, Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, New York, Indiana University Medical Center in Indianapolis, Indiana, and medical director of physician skin care, derm research, and skin sciences, all in Louisville, Kentucky. Our wonderful panel that we have here with Dr. Kircik this evening consists of Camille Lee, head of U.S. Immunology, Jeff Stark, head of U.S. Medical Immunology, Rhonda Peebles, head of U.S. Dermatology, and Andy Porto, head of Dermatology Sales. We would like to thank our supporter this evening, UCB, for making this educational event possible. Before we begin, a couple of logistic tips. If you're having issues hearing the webinar, you can listen to the presentation using your telephone. Just select phone call in the audio pane, and that dial-in information will be available to you. If you're having any technical issues or you have a question for our panel or our faculty, please submit those in the question pane on the right-hand side of your screen. And at the end of this webinar, a survey will pop up in your browser, and it will be emailed to you within 1 to 2 days. We would greatly appreciate it if you could fill out this short survey. And also within 1 to 2 days, you will receive a certificate of attendance. And just as a reminder, we will have some live Q&A at the end of the conversation. And so you are welcome to submit those questions using the question pane on the right-hand side of your screen. So without further ado, I would like to pass the floor virtually to Dr. Kircik.
Thank you, Ashley, and welcome to another series of IDEF educational webinars. And I apologize for our technical problems. Tonight is a record number of attendees we have that we were not able to handle more than 1,300 attendees. So that's why the cameras are not working. I apologize again. So as you know, International Dermatology Education Foundation is a non-profit organization, and our principal mission is to raise awareness and improve dermatology care all over the world through education, especially in the underserved areas. And we've been doing this through our webinars for the last several years, starting COVID. We have done several programs, as you may see, and we serve not only North America, US, and Canada, but also South America, Europe, Southeast Asia. So tonight, we are very lucky to have a very distinguished panel. What we are going to do tonight is that it's not about a disease, it's not about a drug, but it's about a company. It's about UCB. And we named this as the underdog that's taking over immunodermatology in 2024 and beyond. And it's very exciting to have an executive panel from UCB that they're going to discuss their vision in dermatology. And this is live. Unfortunately, the cameras are not working for our guests. So please bear with us, and we're going to have first Camille Lee, who is the head of US Immunology, Dr. Jeff Stark, head of US Medical Immunology, Rhonda Peebles, head of US Dermatology, and Andy Porto, head of Dermatology Sales. So we're very lucky to have a very distinguished panel, and thank you everyone and welcome. Are the microphones working, everyone?
We can hear you. Yeah. Can you hear us?
We can hear you well. Perfect. Perfect. Great. Thank you, guys. So welcome to everyone, and we're gonna start from, I'd like to start from Camille Lee, who's the head of US Immunology of UCB. And Camille, can you tell us a little bit about the UCB, the background, and for those of us who may not be familiar, please.
Oh, absolutely, with pleasure, Dr. Kircik. Good evening, everyone. I'm Camille Lee, and as Dr. Kircik mentioned, I'm the head of US Immunology for UCB. I have worked in the biotech industry now for over 30 years in a variety of different positions, both in the US, but also internationally. and I've been at UCB now for 5 years. And I'm so excited to be here this evening and be a part of this panel discussion. So for those of us who are not familiar with UCB on this call, we are a global biopharmaceutical company that is focused on creating value for people living with severe diseases within immunology and neurology now and into the future. Now, what's really unique and special at UCB, and I say this really also from my own personal experience of being in the industry for so long, but also by being at UCB for 5 years, is that we truly put people at the heart of every single thing we do. People inspire us. They drive our scientific discovery and lead us to rethink the patient experience. We work with stakeholders to address the unmet needs of patients and caregivers, helping them to achieve their goals and live the lives they want. In other words, we aim to have people live the life to their fullest extent with the disease versus the disease managing their life. At UCB, we believe and understand the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our commitment to these values extends beyond just our employees into the communities we serve. We know that and appreciate that an inclusive workforce, one that values the richness of people's unique backgrounds, lives, cultural experiences, religion, and diversity of thought, ultimately leads to better outcomes for all, including people living with severe diseases. We have a strong heritage in immunology with a focus on a broad range of chronic inflammatory conditions that include plaque psoriasis, also known as PSO, hidradenitis suppurativa, often referred to as HS, as well as several forms of arthritis, including psoriatic arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and some less common types of arthritis, such as non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis and ankylosing spondylitis. So UCB started our franchise and anchored our franchise in immunology in 2008 with Cimzia, which is our anti-tumor necrosis factor, also known as a TNF biologic, with indications across the spectrum of conditions. More recently, in October of last year, we were excited and more than thrilled to announce the approval of Bimzelx. Bimzelx is the first and only approved treatment for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, specifically designed to uniquely target and inhibit IL-17A and IL-17F, two key cytokines that drive the inflammatory process. Bimzelx is also under review by the US FDA for 4 other indications, those being hidradenitis suppurativa, psoriatic arthritis, NRXPA, and AS are the 2 rheumatology indications. We expect to hear more from the FDA on these indications by the end of the year. So certainly a very exciting time for us here at UCB.
So Camille, I remember meeting you the summer before the summer AAD in New York, actually, at
Yes.
UCB booth. And I remember talking about Cimzia at that time. So you guys have a long way since then. And now you got Bimzelx, the only and first both IL-17A and F target inhibitor. So I am really, really excited. I think Bimzelx is such a great addition to our armamentarium for treatment of psoriasis. So I am just gonna ask the medical person here, Dr. Stark, tell us a little bit about the Bimzelx and how is the science behind the Bimzelx is, and how is it going?
Thanks, Dr. Kircik. You asked one of my favorite questions. It's I'll just say at the beginning, it's great to be with you. Great to be with your attendees in this great webinar. My name is Jeff Stark. I lead our medical affairs team in immunology. I'm a rheumatologist, previously in full-time practice. and have been with UCB in medical affairs roles for about 10 years now.
We'll forgive you for that, Jeff, being a rheumatologist. Just kidding.
I will say that I feel like dermatologists are close cousins to rheumatologists, particularly when it comes to these inflammatory diseases. So love to be with you all. I said I was excited to talk about Bimzelx, and I definitely am. Camille has said, I think, some great introductory comments about Bimzelx. It really is the product of a long-standing investment by UCB scientists and our clinical team, who identified a long time ago now, more than 15 years ago, that IL-17F, in addition to IL-17A, was an important cytokine that drove inflammatory responses in several diseases, but also, of course, including psoriatic disease. And that really was a revelation in terms of the science that then led to a development pathway to target that. IL-17A and F share a strong overlapping structural homology. They communicate downstream by binding as dimers, either homodimers or heterodimers, to a common receptor. And so we know that both of them contribute to downstream inflammation and, of course, the clinical manifestations that we see in psoriatic diseases like plaque psoriasis. That science really, I will say now, has borne fruit in a very successful phase 3 and phase 3 clinical program that includes more than 2,200 patients. It includes 3 head-to-head trials powered for superiority against other biologic mechanisms of action, all of which have demonstrated the superiority of Bimzelx. And I think we're very excited about the opportunity now to bring Bimzelx as a solution to patients living with plaque psoriasis in the US. I will say some of the efficacy data that we've seen emerging from this program has been really exciting to us. PASI 90 responses approaching 90% as early as week 16. PASI 100 responses around 60% by week 16 and 70% by 1 year. Really a threshold of improvement that we think is very meaningful to the dermatology community and the psoriasis patients that you all serve. One of the interesting things for us is that although we have just launched Bimzelx in the US a few months ago, beginning in October of last year, we've already presented long-term open label extension data. So at AAD in March, we had some hot off the press 4-year data, which demonstrated really excellent stability of clinical effect for Bimzelx treated patients over 4 years and no new safety signals. I'll say, the most common safety events we saw in our clinical trial programs were things like upper respiratory infections, oral candidiasis, and headache. But we're very confident in the safety profile of the drug and are happy. Our label does not have a boxed warning or any contraindications to limit the use of the drug in patients with psoriasis. And I think the final comment that I'll say, Dr. Kircik, from a safety standpoint, is that the Bimzelx label highlights other psoriasis-related conditions or health events, things like mood disorders or hepatic disease, and we know that those are present in the psoriatic disease community with increased incidence. And so that label really has given us a platform not only to transparently put all of our data out there from the Bimzelx clinical program, but also to raise awareness on those burdens that psoriasis patients face regardless of treatment. And so it's been a great opportunity for us, and also to see the dermatology thought leader community independently expressing and publishing their consensus on the safety and efficacy of Bimzelx.
Jeff, you really brought up a great point. As you know, there are a lot of new drugs in dermatology, but when you look at the package insert, the box warnings always concern us. We're in dermatology. We are very, very safety-prone community. So the fact that you guys don't have a box warning, can you elaborate on that a little bit? I mean, that's such a relief for us and such a clean package insert that don't even have a contraindication except the hypersensitivity. So I think that's really a great point. Maybe you can comment on that a little bit, given the environment and the fact that you don't even have a box warning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I share your excitement about a product that has that profile too. I will say that when mentioned we have no contraindications, we literally have none. Most drugs do have a contraindication for hypersensitivity, but we really didn't see a signal in our clinical trial program, and so there's not even a contraindication in that regard. You know, the way
So that's really amazing for a systemic drug, for a biologic, no contraindication whatsoever.
That's right. I think, you know, the different ways that the FDA has to highlight and raise awareness of safety issues from clinical programs can be various, right? It can be everything from a simple warning and precaution. If they feel that rises to a level of greater concern, they can capture that in a boxed warning. They can have contraindications, of course, for certain classes of patients for whom the risk may be too great. And we know, you know, really the epitome of the way the FDA can highlight a safety concern is to attach things like a REMS program to a biologic label. And so, you know, for us, I mentioned some of the warnings and precautions, but we're very glad that the safety profile of this drug didn't rise to the level of greater sort of noting by the FDA through things like a boxed warning or contraindications, which the product does not have.
So I should say that the wait was worthwhile, right? The wait for the product to come to the market in US was really worthwhile. And we all know that you had some stop and go on the journey until you guys came to the market. But, you know, it feels like that you never took your foot off the gas with your commitment to dermatology, at least before the Bimzelx with the Cimzia. And so, Rhonda, can you comment on that a little bit? I am sure you had a lot of decisions to make along the way how to proceed, and if you can tell us a little bit. But before you start, I have to say that Rhonda is especially in my heart because we both come from Louisville, Kentucky. So welcome, Rhonda.
Welcome, Dr. Kircik. Thank you so much, my neighbor, my Louisville, Kentucky neighbor. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this webinar this evening, and hello to all your attendees out there. So glad that that everyone was able to join us tonight, even if we've now officially broken the internet. So I am Rhonda Peebles, head of US Dermatology, and I have been in the dermatology space since 2015. And been in the pharmaceutical arena for the last 25 years. And boy, have I enjoyed the journey, but I think the journey became much more enjoyable as I entered into the dermatology space, and the friendships and the relationships within dermatology are second to none. And I mention that because you asked me about the ups and downs, and yes, it was some incredibly hard times. At times there, I think it was 3, maybe 4 different times that that we just knew we were going to get the approval, and mind you, it was just on the cusp of the outside of COVID, when all of these stops and starts started to happen. But each time we got news that that it would take just a bit longer for the FDA, it usually preceded a big meeting. And so having to travel out, go to the meetings, interact with you guys in the dermatology community certainly took the edge off, so to speak. And it was just always nice. While it was hard for us, it was always nice to be embraced by the dermatology community, those who we have built deep and lasting friendships and relationships with along the way, and many relationships that were strengthened through this. As a company or as an organization, what I am most proud of is the fact that the organization did not waver. You know, at different times this could happen to a company, and unfortunately companies have to make really tough decisions about keeping people on board, paying people, all of those things. But we the company stood very firm in keeping all of us aboard, and not only that, but making sure that we had all the resources that we needed to be able to be successful, and every resource that we needed to be able to create value for patients. And as Camille mentioned, as she was speaking, and she talked about how the patients are at the center of all of our decisions and everything we do. I don't think that we could emphasize that enough. There were many conversations that we were all part of during the stops and starts, and never once did the company waver from talking about the value that we bring to patients. And so we locked down, we focused on Cimzia, a great product that also creates value. But there's so many of us who had come to UCB to be part of something special like Bimzelx. But we had Cimzia in hand, and we made that as special of a product as we could. We grew Cimzia during those times. We introduced many new patients to Cimzia and many new HCPs to Cimzia that had not written it before. So doubled down on the future that we had in hand while we waited for the exciting future to come. And we really, really appreciate all of you, Leon, yourself and your peers for sticking in that with us. Our commitment to dermatology goes beyond the education that we provide, the associations that we partner with, the sponsorships that we have for you, but it also goes out to you guys personally. I think we all celebrate in the growth that we see in the dermatology space, and also to your staff and any ways that we can reach out to educate them as well. We see them as part of the overall family that's created in the dermatology space. And so through our efforts of our sales teams, as well as our medical teams who continued educating along the way, bringing that science of Bimzelx and the promise of clear skin that patients have been waiting for, we made sure to double down on that during the time that we were waiting. And I will tell you, we have been rewarded handsomely by having Bimzelx and having the opportunity to bring such a special product to the dermatology space.
Thank you, Rhonda. You know, that's really commendable that finally we waited and Bimzelx came, because it's so worthwhile for our patients that they were waiting for it, that it arrived. Having said that, how did you guys keep your sales force engaged, right? It's really hard when you're waiting a product and you have the sales force ready to go, but nothing much happening on the way. So how did you handle that? Andy, I'm gonna ask that to you, since you're the head of the dermatology sales.
Yes, thank you for the question, Dr. Kircik, and really appreciate it. And as Rhonda mentioned, really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to be with the dermatology community.
Andy, if you can come up, come show your face. People are sick and tired of seeing me. I think your camera was working, if you can.
That's not fair.
Life is not fair. It's okay. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. You just wanted your twin on the screen.
Another shiny head.
I just needed my glasses, right?
Yep.
Well, listen, hey, everybody. My name is Andy Porto. I'm the U.S. head of dermatology sales here at UCB. I'm coming up on my 4th year, actually, at UCB. It's been a very exciting time, very exciting ride up until this point. And listen, for those of you who don't know me, I've been in dermatology for a really long time. Been in several other dermatology companies. Honestly, I think I'm easily 3 degrees of separation for anybody who is in dermatology right now. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Kircik, I think the first time you and I had a conversation was on a rotary phone. So yes, that's how long it's been that we've been around.
It's scary, but true.
Yes. But in any event, no, you asked a really good question about, how do you keep people motivated and engaged? It was a very challenging time, especially when you consider kind of the starts and stops and the challenges that we've had in getting to where we are today. Well, what can I say? I mean, it was fairly easy, actually. You know, when you have such self-motivated people like we have on the dermatology sales team here at UCB, you know, everybody really kind of dug in and they looked for the positive, the silver lining and anything that we did. But at the end of the day, you know, what's most important and why I really love the people that are here at UCB is, and Camille talked about it, everybody so far talked about it, is our commitment to the patient. And every one of our sales associates are truly committed to the patient, and they care about the care that those patients are getting. And while we didn't have Bimzelx at the time, we still had a very terrific product in a TNF, in Cimzia. And there was still an unmet need in the marketplace to educate the dermatology community on the benefits of Cimzia and what it can do to patients and helping patients get along with their diseases. And so Rhonda alluded to the fact that, you know, we doubled down on our effort there. We really took it to heart. We brought it to patients to make sure that patients had the best care possible for the diseases that they had that Cimzia can help support. So, you know, I'm really proud of what the team has been able to do over those years where Bimzelx was not available, and to stay really truly anchored to Cimzia and the patients that Cimzia helped. Actually, it was a very successful time for us at UCB. In the meantime, we learned quite a bit too, using Cimzia and how we were able to educate the community. We learned a lot of lessons about what is going to be needed to bring Bimzelx to the market. And so we're you know, implementing those learnings here today. And as Rhonda pointed, it's been a tremendous ride so far. Very exciting time. Many patients now experiencing the benefit of Bimzelx. And again, I'm proud of the team and what they're doing to bring that to the dermatology community. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you again. Well, you did bring up the Cimzia and then transition to Bimzelx. So I remember Cimzia being launched back in 2018. It was the last TNF alpha inhibitor, right? And so how did that experience launching the last TNF alpha inhibitor really help you to get ready for Bimzelx? I think I'm going to ask this to Camille, because Camille has been there, right?
Thank you, Dr. Kircik. And yes, we have been in dermatology specifically with Cimzia now for over 6 years. And, you know, as we came in, I must say our research and development had already started on Bimzelx. So we had already started the work on our innovative approach. And we spent quite a bit of time before coming into dermatology really understanding the psoriasis patient and the challenges they are faced with. As we then became more active with Cimzia in dermatology in the US, we built on our knowledge around the unmet need of the patient. You know, it's easy in the competitive market that we have today to kind of assume, hey, you know, all the patients, their needs are met, but the reality is they're not. So we spent the last 6 years before bringing Bimzelx to the market really listening to our patients, listening to their journey, listening to each one of them describe what does life living with psoriasis look like, what are their challenges, what does success look like to them, and also listening to the HCPs, the caregivers, others involved in the care of a psoriasis patient, and hearing their perspective and bringing this all together. So, and feeding this in and having a constant dialogue with our scientists, so that as we were bringing Bimzelx forward, designing our clinical trials, we were doing this with the patient in mind, the patient in the center of what we are aiming to bring to the market. So we are truly understanding that unmet need by connecting with our HCPs and patients in the US market through Cimzia in dermatology, bringing that forward into Bimzelx. So when we bring the product to market and have the availability for the patients, as Rhonda and Andy and Jeff have all shared, we're doing this with a patient in the center and focusing our efforts so that the patient is the winner at the end of the day. And what we're hearing right now is that both from patients and HCPs, that for many patients, this is being a game changer for them and truly hitting in on the unmet needs that they are facing and helping them live their lives with psoriasis and versus psoriasis living and driving their life. So we really spent this time invested deeply, as Rhonda shared, in our community in dermatology so that we can bring the best product that we feel would help many patients.
You know, I agree with you that with that term that it has been a life changer for my patients as well. That is such a good term to use for this product. It truly is. Andy, how did you design your field force? You know, I always wonder to meet the derms need, the West Coast, East Coast, North, South. How did you design it?
So thank you for the question, Dr. Kircik. And yeah, you know, being in the dermatology space for as long as I've have been, you can kind of get accustomed to the needs of the market and, you know, how many folks are needed to kind of meet the needs of the market. But in something like what we have here with Bimzelx, it's all about first understanding about how do you provide value to the patients and then providing value to the practices that serve the patient. You know, once we can determine that, then we can determine the numbers needed to be able to provide the right resources to help those practices achieve a value proposition for patients. You know, Cimzia was a little bit different than Bimzelx in terms of how much we needed to reach the provider community. In Cimzia, we started out with 80 representatives, and you know, the team did a really nice job at, you know, educating the provider community at the time. But we recognize, though, with a drug like Bimzelx and what it really offers to patients today, we knew that we needed, you know, more people to be able to get out and to get into offices and provide value-added resources and support and education so that more patients can have access to the drug. And so we a couple of years ago, we scaled up by, you know, additional 50 plus people to help support that need. And I believe that today that we, you know, we're in a really good spot. We are out, we are seeing, you know, anybody who has opportunities to treat psoriasis and are seeing patients that may benefit from just an outstanding product like Bimzelx. And oh, by the way, we're still representing Cimzia as well in those conversations. We feel like, you know, we're adequately sized to be able to do that. So, you know, we hired a lot of great people, as I mentioned, people who are very resilient, people who have experience already in the space. They know the customers. They have a lot of experience in biologics, self-driven. But really, what I really like is we hired a lot of people who care for others, which is really a critical aspect of who we are in our dermatology family, as well as, more importantly, care about the patient, and we're delivering on that. Again, I feel like we're at a good number right now to be able to deliver on that value proposition to patients and providers who are treating patients.
So, you know, most of us in derm community think of you as the underdog compared to the big boys in the same arena, right? And hence the name of this program. So, Rhonda, tell us what makes you think you guys are the underdog?
That's a great question, Leon, and actually a funny question. But I think that if someone, well, since you've asked me, I'm thinking about some of those potential reasons. We're a mid-sized company. We're located in Atlanta. We're headquartered out of Brussels. We entered the dermatology space a little later than others, and we had the nerve to enter Bimzelx into a crowded landscape much later than others. You add to that the fact that our journey hasn't been an easy one, thanks to the FDA. The time that it took, as I mentioned earlier, Some of our competitors or others in the space may have used that time to plant some seeds that weren't exactly positive. And I really don't think overall that we were expected to do well in the space. I think there was a lot of doubt as to whether UCB could commercialize. And then you pivot to the launch success, the commitment to dermatology that I spoke about, the potential indications that are coming in PSA, AxSpA, HS, a 2 ml formulation, all that's going to come in rapid time a little bit later this year. I think to overcome that underdog kind of title or nomenclature, it was just important for us to build the right team, as Andy mentioned. Build the right team of customer-facing people, building the right team of marketers, and taking the journey with UCB of what it takes to actually be successful in the dermatology space, bringing in a lot of dermatology know-how and knowledge and expertise, but then also leaning on all of you as a community. I can't tell you how much I have learned and continue to learn as I partner with you guys in dermatology that helps us to raise the bar every day to overcome that underdog status. So if you ask me, I don't feel like an underdog, but I can see how others, particularly at the beginning, as we were building up dermatology, would say that we are.
Yeah, I totally understand and agree. So now there was a lot of anticipation, right, for the Bimzelx to come to the market. So Dr. Stark, now that it's in the market, what's the reaction from the dermatology community? We talked a little bit about the anticipation, and I thought it was life-changing for our patients, but what's overall, you guys have more on the pulse than myself. So how is the reaction from the derm community?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say this has been one of the funnest moments since I've been at UCB, Dr. Kircik. So, Bimzelx was approved for psoriasis in Europe way back in August of 2021. And so, we as a U.S. team have had to listen to the great stories from our European colleagues and their dermatology customers over on the other side of the pond for quite a while, and we've kind of waited to have some stories of our own for a while. But ever since the approval of Bimzelx for psoriasis in October of last year, we've really started to hear just kind of an outpouring of anecdotes about the transformational nature of Bimzelx from both dermatologists and directly from patients. It's been really exciting to see. Like, we were, of course, very curious to hear what the real world experience would be like. We knew the clinical trial data, but what we really wanted to hear about was how the drug is making a difference for people living in the real world. And we've been so pleased to hear people sharing their amazing stories about that. Hardly a week goes by that I or Rhonda or Andy or Camille doesn't get a text from a dermatologist that we know with before and after pictures. It's been really exciting to see those, mainly because it's confirmation for us that the drug is making a difference in the life of patients. Many of those patients, as you can imagine, have had long-standing plaque psoriasis. Many of them have experienced and failed to respond to multiple other modalities of treatment. And so to hear these success stories is really great, and it feels like the culmination of many, many years of work by our clinical teams, our medical teams, our sales and marketing teams to finally bring this to fruition. Now, we understand and we appreciate that those are anecdotal stories. That doesn't make them any less meaningful to us because they tell a true story of what's happening with the patient. But we are also committed and in the process of building out real-world studies in the U.S. right now. Some of those we're conducting in registries, others are being done in partnership with thought leaders or academic institutions, but it'll be really exciting to continue to develop those data and have the opportunity to share them with the community, and look forward to those giving greater emphasis to those really transformative anecdotal stories that we've been hearing every week.
My mom used to say there's always a good in every bad. The fact that the launch was delayed here in US. Meanwhile, it was already launched in 40 other countries. So you were I believe, probably it's the one of the few drugs or the first one that when you launched, you had 3-year data, safety and efficacy in it, so that you brought that experience from abroad to us. And that's very valuable, especially when it comes to safety. The fact that we had that 3-year data right at the launch here in this country. So now that it's launched, how is the launch going, Camille? I know I heard it's going pretty good, and maybe it's even better than you expected. Tell us why and how, other than the fact that you have a great team and you have a great drug. So I didn't expect anything less than a great launch and expected better than what you wanted, but tell us a little bit more.
Sure. You know, when you work with a great team of people, we inspire each other and we build on top of each other. So I do have to emphasize that it makes a big difference. And, you know, working with colleagues like Jeff, Rhonda, and Andy, it's really exceptional, because great people that we all inspire each other, and that makes a difference. What I will say, one of the things that is the backbone of our success, I believe, is by putting that patient in the center. I know you've heard me say this several times through this call, but it truly is what makes the difference, because we've understood the challenges a patient faces. And not only have we brought an innovative new mode of action to help address those needs, we've also looked at how do we engage with the community to help create, one, the awareness of the product being available, but also to make sure that the scientific information is out there, to ensure that the questions that are being raised are being addressed in a very timely manner, and to ensure that when a patient gets a prescription, that they are able to get the product in a seamless way, not only for the patient, but also for the HCP office, because we know it's a very busy time in dermatology offices, and we want to make it a seamless experience for the dermatologist as well. And we recognize that their care for their patients is just as important as we want to put it, as we believe it is too. So by putting that patient in the center and designing a launch that meets their needs is part of what has made ourselves successful. And some of you may have seen our most recent direct-to-consumer campaign. It's called Get Yourself Back. And we want to make sure that patients are aware of Bimzelx. So this campaign recently started, and we're also reaching out through multiple patient channels. And the key here is being where the patient is, being where the healthcare prescriber is, so that we're touching them where they are versus asking them to come to us. And these are key facets that I believe make a launch unique and different. Now, the other aspect to that is making sure a patient has access to the drug. And we all know in the US that a new product that comes to market usually goes through a variety of steps with working with payers to achieve that access. And we have been working with payers now for over several years. And Jeff and his team have been having ongoing appropriate dialogues as payers have requested the scientific information, and discussing what the science behind the product means, what the results are. We are in ongoing dialogue with payers on a regular basis and continue to evolve that access for patients. And we're confident we're going to continue to grow the access for patients through the payer environment. In the meantime, like many others, we have a bridge program. And this provides that seamless example or opportunity, if you will, that when a prescription is written, a patient can go straight onto our bridge program and have access to the drug until the payer environment opens up and is provided for them. We also provide a nursing support program through our Bimzelx Navigate. And this is really helping patients on board for Bimzelx, how to use their treatment, how to address questions they may have, but also how to stay on therapy and the importance of staying on therapy. So we've really taken a 360 look at the patient and the HCP and how we are engaging with them. So now you can say, okay, give me some facts, give me an idea of what this looks like. Well, we've been on the market now for less than 6 months, and it appears that we are setting a new standard in the launch of such a product, a biologic in the IL-17 space, as being the fastest growing IL-17 in dermatology here in 2024. I can tell you that we have more than 7,000 prescriptions that have been written for Bimzelx, and we know that more than 1,000 HCPs have prescribed Bimzelx. So that gives you a little bit of insights into the number of patients that are benefiting from these prescriptions.
That's really amazing.
Really exciting, Dr. Kircik. We're thrilled to see that patients are getting the opportunity to get access to the drug.
And you know, that's one of the most important things that happens every day in our offices. So that access, the ease of what I call the ease of use of the bridge programs, because almost every company has a bridge program, but some are very difficult to use than the others that are not patient friendly. So I do appreciate that UCB has made that bridge program. The access is so easy for our biologic coordinators, for our offices, as well as for the patients, right? But having said that, still, Bimzelx came to a very crowded market. What, 12, 13 biologics already were in the market before you guys, and then 3 other IL-17 products, right? So Rhonda, what in such crowded market, what makes the Bimzelx stand out?
It's a good question in a crowded space, but I would say that what makes Bimzelx stand out, or what makes it special, is the fact that we are the first and only IL-17 which selectively targets A plus F. And the F does make a difference. I think that Bimzelx is, to steal a word from our promotional campaign, it's transformational, and it comes with transformational results. We have unprecedented speed of response. In fact, there's, as Jeff mentions, there's probably not a week that goes by that one of us doesn't get pictures or anecdotes from some of the physicians out there with just how fast Bimzelx works for their patients, and it can be life-changing. We've heard a lot of stories about patients coming in who had just about given up on different therapies. They'd get on therapies, and there's some really great therapies out there, but the therapies may not work for everyone. And so patients may get on a therapy, do well for a while, and come in not thinking that anything is going to work for them, and they get prescribed Bimzelx, and within a short period of time, they start to see clearance. And maybe they had not seen it work that fast before. So that speed of response and how that is being embraced by or celebrated by some of the patients is just remarkable. Not only that, but the depth of response, the fact that the bar is high now with Bimzelx to going up to and reaching 100% or PASI 100 and absolute clearance for patients. That's a game changer that we're very proud of. And with the data that we have and being able to launch with such long-term data, we know that patients stay clear up to 4 years. That's something that we can be very, very proud of, and that can set us apart. And not only sustaining out to the 4 years, but the depth of response that you can still see at 4 years, I think is very, very important. And when I talk about that speed of response, I would be remiss if I don't mention the fact that that's with 1 dose. And I think that that is also what makes Bimzelx stand out. So again, as Camille mentioned, it's very early, but these early stories are very inspirational, and we hope to be able to see those stories more and more as more patients have access to Bimzelx over time. And yeah, so it's a lot to be proud of, a lot to be celebrated, and I'm just happy to be part of the team.
That's amazing. Thanks, Rhonda. Now I want to go over a overall problem in dermatology. You know, the companies, they come and go into dermatology. They sort of have that desire to come into dermatology, and then they sort of disappear. Jeff, what are UCB's plans? What, you know, right now you have 2 products. Tell us a little bit about how you're gonna stick around. If will you stick around?
So the quick and true answer is yes. And Dr. Kircik, you mentioned Cimzia, of course, where has given us an opportunity to be in the plaque psoriasis space as well as psoriatic arthritis, and then of course Bimzelx that we're also excited about and focused on today. But UCB has a really long history. We're approaching our 100th anniversary as a company. And our pharmaceutical history actually began in the antihistamine space. And so it's not perhaps well known, but our very first pharmaceutical product at UCB was Atarax back in the 1950s. And we followed that up with Zyrtec and Xyzal. And so I know those are familiar medicines to many of your listeners because they've been an important part of treating histamine-mediated diseases or diseases characterized by pruritus. And so, really we've had connections to the dermatology community for as long as we've been a pharmaceutical company. Certainly, Bimzelx is not only what's here now, but also the immediate next thing on the horizon. And Camille alluded earlier to additional indications that we are seeking and have already filed for Bimzelx, including an indication for HS. We are incredibly excited about the potential for the drug in HS, and some of your listeners may have seen our clinical data that we've presented at scientific congresses. We've, even while waiting for that potential future indication for Bimzelx, we're becoming increasingly active in the HS space. One example of that I would love to highlight is the recent launch of a campaign called Make History, but that's history without an I, so that it's Make HS-tory. We are really excited about this platform. It is a campaign focused on education, awareness, targeting things like acceleration of diagnosis and optimization of outcomes for patients with HS. And it is really hot off the press. There is both a portion of that platform targeted towards the healthcare provider community and a separate parallel one targeted towards patients. You can find that at makehistory.com or hcp.makehistory.com. It's also on Facebook and Instagram, but it's a great example of how UCB is committed to the dermatology community and to dermatology patients, even in areas that have not yet arrived for us today. Beyond that, I would say we are continuing to funnel major resources into our clinical development programs. We have a phase 3 program underway in lupus, another disease that certainly spans our dermatology, rheumatology specialties, but has major cutaneous manifestations, as your listeners will know. And we are developing assets in the area of atopic dermatitis. So we are excited about this. Really, everywhere we're investing as UCB is a novel mechanism of action with the goal that it will bring something that is new and meaningful and differentiated to patients whose diseases are not well controlled with the options that they have today.
Great. We are almost over time, but we started late, so I apologize for my audience. And there are a lot of questions, but I'm gonna pick one that keeps coming over and over from the audience. What does UCB stand for?
Well, I'd like to say we stand for patients, which is the truth. But we often get that question. So UCB is a company I mentioned. We're approaching our 100th anniversary. We were founded in Belgium by a man named Emmanuel Janssen, and actually at that time, when it was first founded, before it became a pharmaceutical company, UCB was a chemical company, producing things like films and antifreezes. So a humble beginning for a company that's really transformed itself in many ways. But although UCB doesn't officially stand for anything today, the company is legally called UCB. Originally, UCB stood for Union Chimique Belge, or Belgian Chemical Union. So it's a reminder for us of our humble beginnings as a company, but how far we've come and how much we've transformed.
So thanks for that French accent, Jeff. That was well done. So I thank you so much. Before we close, Rhonda, would you have some closing remarks, please?
Yeah, thank you, Leon. First of all, thank you, Leon, for the opportunity to join you tonight, as well as your listeners. But then second, it's just that, you know, if you can't tell from the four of us here, we are having a blast. This is a lot of fun to be in the dermatology space, to be with all of you. To have the commitment that we have to the dermatology space, but to also feel your commitment as well for UCB and for our teams. And we look forward to continuing to being part of the dermatology community for the time to come. And we just appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and sharing this time with everyone. So thank you, Leon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I'd like to thank my audience. Really, I apologize for the lack of the cameras, but you can thank yourselves, guys. You were more than 1,300 people in attendance tonight. You literally broke my system. So I thank you again, and I thank you, all of you, the whole CEO panel, executive panel of the UCB. Thank you for your support. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
And please join us next week for another IDEF session by Dr. Lisa Swanson. She's going to discuss atopic dermatitis. Bye-bye. Good night, everyone.